Your major research project in this class will have three components to it. It'll be made up of your annotated bibliography, and that will be 5 sources that you have found that analyze the literary text that you've chosen to write about. And then you will use your annotated bibliography and those sources to write your research paper. And finally, you will present that project in a digital poster. So you have 3 assignments, one for each of those: the annotated bibliography, the paper, and the poster. So let me talk a little bit about the annotated bibliography and the paper. The poster will come at the end of the semester, and it's not as much work as the other 2. So let me talk about what you should be working on as we begin gathering sources and formulating a thesis and deciding what you want to write your paper about. The annotated bibliography requires you to find 5 secondary scholarly peer-reviewed sources for your research paper. If you don't know what that means, secondary means these are articles that analyze your short story, the novel, whichever thing you've chosen. Those sources should be analyses of the text that you've chosen to write about. They also have to be scholarly, which means they have been peer-reviewed. That means they are going to appear in scholarly journals. They're not going to be just found out there on the internet. Rather, they're going to be found in the our library's databases. These are the kind of sources that it costs money to produce, and the university subscribes to the magazines that publish these, and since you've paid your fees, you can have access to them while you're at UNG. And we're going to practice using those kinds of sources. You should have some experience with those kinds of sources. The kinds of sources you find in databases like JSTOR or maybe MLA, International Bibliography. You might have used those before in English 1101 or 1102. But if you're not very familiar with how to use those kinds of sources, on the annotated bibliography assignment sheet, I have linked you to a research strategies sheet. And that research strategy sheet will kind of walk you through getting into the UNG website and finding the kind of sources that you're needing to look for. There is also a sample annotated bibliography linked to the assignment. So you can open it up and look at it and see what this thing is going to look like when you finish. It's only going to be about 2 pages long. Each source that you find, you're going to do an MLA citation of it like you would in a bibliography. Going to include, the title of the article or the book, the person who wrote it, the publisher who put it out, and the year, and all that stuff. And then, and I've also linked you to MLA guidelines in case you're not familiar with those on the Purdue OWL website. You are also going, for each article that you decide to use out of 5 sources that you're collecting, you're going to write a short summary of that source. That summary needs to be in your own words. It will go through Turnitin.com. It should not have any quotes in it, so it should be in your words. Should not show any, in the actual summary at least, shouldn't show any similarity to other ones that have been turned in. In other words, we're looking for plagiarism. So if you write it in your own words, you shouldn't have to worry about it. Each summary should be between 90 and 110 words. So when you finish citing and summarizing each of your 5 sources, it's only going to be about 2 pages long. It's not going to feel like a lot of work. It's not going to look like it, but I'm going to understand that you did put a lot of work into this, because just finding the sources that are going to be useful to your project is going to take a little bit of work. And then you've got to read each one, you've got to understand it well enough to summarize it, and then you've got to actually, craft the summaries. So it's going to take just a little while to do it. Once you've done it, though, you've got a nice foundation for your research paper. So let's talk about the research paper. So the research paper itself is going to be an analysis of one of our literary works from our syllabus. On the assignment sheet, I've given you a list of the stories or poems that you can use. Okay, and I've put that list there partly because I know there's plenty of research out there on each one of these. So I know you'll find some sources if you go and do research on them. So you could use Beloved. You could find 5 articles that analyze the novel Beloved, and that would be a start for your research paper. You could choose Barn Burning by Faulkner. You could choose Theme for English B by Langston Hughes. Any of the ones on the list. You're just going to pick one. And then you're going to, for your paper, you're going to formulate a thesis about this. You're going to answer the question, what insight can we get from this story or poem? What's something specific and relevant and useful that this poem or story tells us? And there is also a sample paper that you can look at to get a sense of what kinds of thesis statements make sense for this kind of paper. So in addition to coming up with a good thesis to control your paper and to drive it forward, you're going to provide evidence from the literary text. What are examples from the poem or the story that lead us to this conclusion that you're interested in? You're also going to use at least 3 of the sources that you found for your annotated bibliography. So at the very least, you're going to discuss the story or the poem that you focused on, the literary work, and then you're also going to talk about at least 3 of the secondary sources that you found, the articles or books about that literary work. And you're going to integrate those into your discussion. So please do go and look at the sample research paper just to make sure that you're on the right track, that you're thinking about the right sort of project here. Your overall paper is only going to be 3 to 5 pages long. It's not a real long research paper. So if you have questions about this project, let me know. We're going to be working on it a little at a time, and there will be plenty of moments where you might be able to stop and say, okay, I've started the work, but I have a question about the direction that I'm going in, and I'd like a meeting just to make sure I'm on the right track. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what your projects will be. I always learn some things from these projects, and I like seeing your perspective on the works that we're reading in class. Thanks.